I don't know if you folks can tell or not, but I got a new camera. And I think the footage so far, just with me playing with it, is like significantly better than my old camera. So it's going to be a little bit funny because the like older footage is probably going to look terrible.
Maybe, but they're on springs and everything.
Or I guess.
Control the blue eddy. He's gonna put a light bulb in there. So then it'll be
That's the
really
plan.
magical.
It's gonna be wobbly.
Nice.
Button. And there's a remote control hanging on the thing. You can see what this says. There's 3 things.
The big.
This is very down too.
I wonder how much power that is taken from the Blue Eddy.
We did watch it when you did it. It wasn't that bad. Like, look at your dog. She's choosing to lay down in the forest. Some other direction.
Didn't think
I can't
I
see
broke.
any of
I
that.
think it broke while I
Yeah,
was
so
using it.
I just don't know which thing it would be in.
So we're trying to put these cabinets together. The instructions are terrible.
Yeah.
Even just that stuff.
Yeah.
The chains on his tractor sounded like mouse collar.
You're forgetting needle those pliers anyway.
A lot of people really enjoyed my like wood stove review video where I was talking about my tiny wood stove. Now go away. Go lie down. Go lie down. Go lie down. Go on. Go on. This is why I have trouble recording in the tiny house, because the pets are just, they're always like in my face, and as soon as I sit on the floor, it's like game over. So anyway, so a lot of folks enjoyed my video talking about my tiny wood stove. And some of you folks had questions about the burn time. I still have my jacket on because as like I'm still like waiting for my wood stove to get up to temperature. This window behind me is open because the door of the wood stove is open. When I'm waiting for the larger logs to light, I will keep a window open, and then I also keep the wood stove open as well. Because otherwise I just find that it takes so long for it to heat up, but it's the temperature is heating up really nicely. So a lot of folks had a lot of questions about the burn time for my tiny wood stove. And yes, my tiny wood stove, if I load it like all the way, it'll burn for about an hour to an hour and a half. That's just on its own. That's not including the time that it takes to light it, to have it reach temperature, and also to like have like a bed of coals, right? Because I find I can't load the wood stove with a bunch of wood unless I have a good solid bed of coals. There are ways to extend your burn time, and we are gonna do a little bit of that tonight. And the reason being isn't so much it's gonna be super, super cold tonight. It's gonna be like right now it's about -2 degrees Celsius, and it's gonna get down to about -7, which like that's not super cold, but I want my wood stove to be burning a bit hotter, and I want it to be burning a little bit longer because it's already so late. So normally I come up to the tiny house at usually 7 o'clock, sometimes 8 o'clock. But tonight I didn't arrive until 9 o'clock because I was actually waiting for the new camera to charge. I wanted to make sure that the battery from the new camera was like fully charged before I brought it up. Anyway. So because I'm in the tiny house so late, I'm going to use a method that we used actually when we got down to -20, -25 or so degrees Celsius over the holidays. And that was very, very cold. Like I don't have any other any other heat source. I only have the wood stove. And so I can show you what we did to extend the burn time when it was that cold. We're gonna use the same method tonight, mainly because I want to go to bed soon. I don't want to be up for another 2 or 3 hours warming the tiny house up. So what we're gonna do now is I already have a couple logs in here, and we're just gonna let this burn down to coals, and then we will go from there. I had to take off my jacket because I was too warm. I'm really testing the like low light capabilities of this camera. I think I'm pretty happy with it so far, to be honest with you. Okay, so back to my wood stove. Hopefully the camera can like detect me properly because I'm wearing like dark clothing now with like dark, and it's quite dark in here, but I really do enjoy it because like this is my regular lighting. And with my old camera, when I wanted to record in here, I had to like turn on all the lights. And so anyway, so back to my wood stove. Now, depending on, Ninja, go away please. Depending on the size of your space, having a burn time of only an hour and a half is not necessarily a bad thing. Like, I would say that I run my wood stove probably for only a couple, it depends on the weather. So the weather we get here is generally fairly mild. Like right now, like I said, it's like, you know, -2 degrees Celsius. We did get down to like -20, -25. That was like pretty tricky to deal with. Like it was really cold. But for the most part, like this weather that we're getting right now is like pretty like seasonal for here. I think that if I consistently got like -20 or -25 temperatures, like I don't think that I would be able to have a tiny wood stove at all. Like I think that I would need a regular wood stove, but it depends on the weather in your area, and it also depends on how small your space is. Like I only live in 150 square feet, and this like wood stove, it pumps out heat like crazy. And so most of the time when the weather is quite mild, I don't want the wood stove to be running for, you know, 4 or 5 hours at a time, because at that point I'm like roasting myself out of my space and I'm having to like open windows. On the weekends, like when I'm here and I'm not working my day job, I do generally run the wood stove for about that long. You know, I'll get up, depending on the weather outside, sometimes I sleep in till 7 or 8 in the morning, but if it's really, really, really cold, like when we were getting that -20 weather, oh my goodness. I was running the wood stove all the way until midnight, 1 in the morning. I would go to sleep, get a couple hours of sleep. I would wake up right at 5 in the morning again and like light the wood stove again, and the temperature dropped like crazy. Like I would heat the house up to, you know, 22, 23, 24 degrees, and when it was like 20 below, like -20 below zero, or 20 below zero, I guess, when it was -20, oh, it was so hard to like warm the whole house up, like even with this wood stove, and this wood stove like pumps out a lot of heat. So I think depending on your climate and depending on the size of your space, you don't necessarily, like I don't need my wood stove to be running for 4 or 5 or 6 hours at a time. So I don't generally mind the shorter burn time. Now that does mean that you do have pretty wide like temperature fluctuations. Like I will often wake up in the morning and it will be 9 or 10 degrees in here, which that sounds really cold. And if we had like a full-size house, maybe that would be super, super cold. But in the tiny house, I find it doesn't actually bother me. I do want to show you folks how we like extend our burn time. And pellets is one of the ways that we do that. So when it was -20, what I was finding is like wood just like wasn't cutting it. Like the wood stove was having a really difficult time getting up to temperature. It would just like an hour and a half burn time when it was like 20 below zero was like not okay. So there are a couple ways to extend your burns. One of the ways to do that is by using wood pellets. And so we were exploring, well, I was exploring 2 methods when I was looking to extend my burns. The first method was using high BTU logs, which are basically just logs that you buy. And my concern with high BTU logs was that like this wood stove can get like really hot really quickly. And I find it's very often like finicky. I was trying to get footage earlier of the thermometer, but the camera would not focus on it. It was low light, right? So, but the temperature fluctuations of the flue will fluctuate quite a bit. I find I have to supervise the wood stove quite carefully because temperature can vary like a lot. And so when it was 20 below zero, it was a really big struggle for the temperature in the wood stove to like get warm enough. And it was just, yeah. And then even when it did get warm enough, like because it was so cold, my wood stove wasn't burning long enough to like warm up the environment, right? And so I was concerned with high BTU logs that it was going to like heat my wood stove up too much, and I was just, I don't know. Plus the high BTU logs are quite large for my firebox. I get a tiny wood stove. It is a small firebox. And so I wanted a little bit more like variation. And so we ended up going with wood pellets. They're really, really cheap. They were $10 for a 50-pound bag. And this wood stove can burn pellets, and they basically, I don't know if the camera will focus on them, but they basically just look like, they honestly just look like hamster food. And so I will load the wood. So I basically let it burn down to kind of coals, which is where we're at right now. And then I actually dampen the wood stove down completely, which is not something that you normally do when you add wood. When you add wood, you actually like open it up completely. That way the wood lights on fire and starts burning and blah, blah, blah. But when I add pellets, I dampen it down completely, because if I don't, and I add the pellets, they're gonna start burning like right away, and then I'm not gonna be able to like finish everything I need to finish. So essentially what I do is I take a cup of pellets and I put it on top of the coals, and then I put a layer of logs, and then I put another cup of pellets, another layer of logs, another cup of pellets, and I just keep doing that up until the wood stove is full. Tiny wood stove, it doesn't take very long. Like, I think I only can have like three layers, sometimes 4 if I'm using real small logs. And then after that, I will usually open up the stove completely for just a few minutes to make sure it remains at temperature. And then I dampen it down, not usually completely, but pretty close. And then after that, the wood pellets will, you know, give me enough, I don't know, energy, heat, basically. And I found with the wood pellets, I was able to almost double my burn time. So where my wood stove would burn for an hour to an hour and a half, with the pellets, I was getting closer to 2.5 hours of burn time, which was really nice. Okay. I ended up getting just a couple layers in. It really depends on the size of the logs that I'm using. But yeah, that's how I load the wood stove with pellets. And yeah, so hopefully that helped. If you have any questions about my tiny wood stove, do let me know and I will do my best to answer them.